Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. In 1979, when I was 18, both my parents passed away. Alone, I traveled north to find my fiancé, Nathan Carter. Standing in the courtyard in his military uniform, Nathan looked me up and down, dressed neatly and trying to appear my best, then turned to the woman beside him, his beloved Grace Miller, and said calmly, "This is the maid my parents hired from our hometown." In my previous life, I had taken out our engagement token right then and there, exposing Nathan's lie. Grace, humiliated and furious, stormed off and later married Nathan's greatest rival, only to be tormented by him until she died. Nathan eventually married me, but he made my life a long nightmare. I became pregnant 7 times, and every single time ended in miscarriage. When the doctor finally told me I would never be able to have children again, Nathan grabbed me by the throat and sneered, "A woman who killed my Grace doesn't deserve to give birth to my child." When I finally learned the truth, I was broken beyond repair. I stabbed Nathan in the chest with a surgical knife, then jumped from the 18th floor. When I opened my eyes again, I heard the same words echoing in my ears. Nathan's voice saying to Grace, "This is the maid my parents hired from our hometown." I swallowed my bitterness, forced a calm smile and nodded. "Yes," I said softly. "I'm the maid the Carter family hired. Nathan Carter, from this moment on, let's sever all ties between us." When General Carter, Nathan's father, found out that his son had called me a maid, he slapped him hard across the face. "Nonsense," he shouted. "Go outside right now and make this clear. Lily Summers is your fiancé, not some servant." How could I ever face her parents after this? Years ago, when General Carter and his wife Aunt Helen were sent to a labor camp and nearly starved to death, it was my parents who secretly brought them food for 3 years, keeping them alive. Out of gratitude, the general insisted on arranging an engagement between Nathan and me, even though my parents refused. After the Carters returned to the city, our 2 families gradually grew distant. In my past life, I was determined to fulfill my parents' last wish to marry Nathan. But Nathan never loved me. To avoid me, he volunteered to be transferred to the far southwest. And in 10 years he only came home 3 times. Aunt Helen, desperate after years of not seeing her son, came to resent me, believing I had driven him away. Even General Carter began to look at me with growing disappointment. Still, I thickened my skin and applied to join the army as a military spouse, hoping to be near him. But Nathan, still trying to escape me, volunteered to go to the front lines. He narrowly survived, barely coming back alive. For her son's sake, Aunt Helen cried and begged the general to bring me back from Nathan's side. Back in the cold, lonely courtyard, I endured endless ridicule and scorn. Half my life slipped away without a single day of happiness. Now, seeing Nathan gently hold Grace in his arms, afraid she might suffer even the slightest discomfort, I finally understood that any marriage built on force is destined for misery. "Nathan Carter, in this life I'm letting you go and freeing myself as well." This time, when I arrived at the military compound, Aunt Helen hadn't come to hate me yet, and General Carter still treated me with kindness. Only Nathan remained the same, furious and rebellious. "I love Grace," he shouted. "I'll never accept an arranged marriage. You owe Lily's parents, not me. Why should I sacrifice my happiness to repay your debts?" General Carter's face turned crimson with rage. He grabbed his belt, ready to strike his son, but I stepped forward and blocked him. "Uncle Carter," I said quietly, "I only came here looking for work as a maid so I can support myself. I've never met Nathan before, and I never intended to marry him. Let's call off the engagement." As I spoke, I took out the engagement token Aunt Helen had given me, a crystal carving of a wild goose, and handed it to Nathan. "I heard wild geese are symbols of loyalty," I said softly. "You should give this to the woman you truly love." Nathan hadn't expected me to be the one to end it. He looked relieved, but also strangely irritated. His eyes scanned me sharply. "You really don't want to marry me? You just want to be the maid in my house?" I nodded and met his gaze, carrying all the hatred and pain from my past life. "Nathan Carter, I don't love you and I don't want to marry you." His face darkened instantly. He clutched the crystal goose tightly in his fist and said coldly, "Fine, you better remember what you said today. Don't you dare develop any foolish feelings for me." And so I began living in the Carter household again, this time as a country maid. Feeling guilty, General Carter and Aunt Helen offered to find me a respectable job, but I shook my head and refused. I was just a country girl who had come from a small village. Other than washing clothes and cooking, I knew nothing else. I didn't even have a penny to my name. The money for my trip here to find Nathan Carter had been pulled together by the kind villagers back home, 1 coin from each of them. I needed to earn money as soon as possible so I could pay them back. Seeing how determined I was to work as a maid, General Carter and Aunt Helen had no choice but to agree. When I stepped into the Carter family kitchen again, my hands moved almost instinctively, as if my body remembered everything. The sweet and sour ribs and the winter melon meatball soup I made that day left General Carter and Aunt Helen completely stunned. "Lily, I didn't expect you to be such a great cook," Aunt Helen said in surprise. I smiled faintly, though deep down it was bitter. Of course I can cook, I thought. In my previous life, I served this family for 40 years. I knew every one of your tastes better than any housekeeper ever could. General Carter loved sweet and sour ribs. In my last life, I had sat outside the back door of a state-run restaurant for a month, begging the chef to teach me that private recipe. Aunt Helen loved winter melon meatball soup. I had burned my hands over and over again until I finally learned to make the broth clear and the meatballs tender. Nathan picked up a few strands of his favorite simmered shredded tofu, sneered and said coldly, "Stop pretending. Do you think making a few dishes my parents like will make you fit to be their daughter-in-law?" General Carter slammed his hand down on the table. "If you want to eat, eat. If you don't, get out." Nathan threw his chopsticks onto the table, grabbed his jacket and stormed out. Once again, father and son parted on bad terms. I held back my tears, lowering my head so far. I almost buried my face in my bowl. I hated myself for being reborn at such a helpless age, with no family, no support, and nowhere to go. Even the introduction letter from my old work brigade had expired. If I didn't have the nerve to stay at the Carter's house, I'd probably be treated as a vagrant and sent back to my village. Just a little longer, I told myself. Once I've saved enough money, I'll leave the Carter family. Maybe I can find work with another household, get my residency papers sorted out. I wanted to settle in this city. I wanted to go to school. In this life, I wanted to become someone useful, someone who could truly contribute to the world. Even though Nathan and I lived under the same roof, I deliberately avoided him. When he was at work, I cleaned the house, washed the laundry, and cooked. By the time he came home, I'd already eaten in the kitchen and hidden away in the maid's room with a book. Soon, I received my first month's wages, 20 yuan, from Aunt Helen. I sent 15 yuan back to my hometown, asking the brigade leader to repay the kind neighbors who had lent me my travel money. With the remaining 5 yuan, I decided to go to the supply store to buy some pencils, erasers, and notebooks. But to my surprise, I ran into Nathan and Grace Miller there. When Grace saw me walking a few steps behind them, Nathan's face twisted with anger. "Lily Summers," he shouted. "Do you have no shame at all? How many times do I have to tell you? I will never accept an arranged marriage. Even if you follow me to the ends of the earth, I would never marry a peasant girl like you." Laughter rippled through the onlookers. My face burned hot and I quickly said, "I wasn't following you. I came to buy pencils." Grace tugged gently on Nathan's sleeve and whispered, "Nathan, we must have misunderstood Lily. Maybe she really is here to buy pencils." Nathan gave a cold laugh. "She's an illiterate girl who didn't even finish elementary school. What would she need pencils for?" "Grace, you're too naive. You don't know what some women will do just to stay in the city." I raised my head, looked straight at him, and forced myself to speak firmly. If I really wanted to stay in the city, I wouldn't have broken off our engagement. The crowd erupted instantly. "What? That girl was actually Captain Carter's fiancé," someone exclaimed. "Then who's the one holding his hand?" another asked. "Isn't it obvious? His mistress," someone whispered loudly. Grace's face went pale. She yanked her hand free from Nathan's grasp and ran away crying. Nathan's expression darkened, his eyes burning with fury. "Lily, if anything happens to Grace because of this," he growled, "I'll make you pay with your life." With that, he shoved through the crowd and ran after Grace, leaving me standing there under countless staring eyes. I watched coldly as Nathan Carter's back disappeared from sight, his every step filled with anger and determination. Turning away, I entered the supply store, bought the paper, pens, and ink I needed, and went home. I had just taken out my fountain pen and ink, ready to practice calligraphy, when the door to the maid's room was suddenly kicked open from the outside. Nathan burst in, his face twisted with rage. Without a word, he grabbed the bottle of ink on the table and hurled it to the floor. Glass shards exploded everywhere and a few pieces slashed across my calves, leaving thin trails of blood. The pain stung so badly that tears welled up in my eyes. Nathan froze for a second when he saw I was bleeding, as if something crossed his mind, but then he gave a cold laugh. "First, you spread rumors outside and ruined Grace's reputation," he said harshly. "And now you stand here pretending to be the victim, Lily. I really underestimated the tricks you have up your sleeve for a country maid." Fighting the pain, I said through clenched teeth, "I didn't spread any rumors, and I never meant to ruin Miss Grace's name." But Nathan didn't listen. His face remained cold as he grabbed me by the arm and dragged me toward the door. "Everyone outside is saying Grace is the one who broke up our engagement. She's being destroyed by the gossip. You'll come right now and set the record straight. Tell everyone our engagement was arranged by our parents, and that it's already been canceled." My legs were bleeding so badly that I could barely walk, but Nathan still pulled me all the way to the performing troupe. Grace was there, her eyes swollen from crying. The moment she saw Nathan, she threw herself into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Nathan instinctively reached to hold her and pushed me aside. I stumbled backward and fell straight into a cold, solid chest. Dazed, I looked up at the man who had caught me, Liam Reed. In my previous life, because I had stubbornly insisted on marrying Nathan, Grace had married Nathan's greatest rival in revenge. That rival was Liam. The Carter and Reed families were equals in power, and Nathan and Liam had been at odds since childhood. Later, I heard that after Liam married Grace, he treated her cruelly until she could no longer bear the humiliation and drowned herself. I had no desire to be involved in the tangled grudges of these privileged families. Stepping forward, I faced the crowd, ignoring Nathan's threatening glare. In a clear voice, I said, "Nathan and I were once engaged, but the engagement has been canceled. Nathan and Grace are in a normal relationship. She didn't ruin anything between us. I'm not Nathan's fiancé, just the Carter family's maid." When I finished, I pushed through the crowd and hurried toward the health clinic. Nathan's expression softened slightly. Seeing the blood still running down my leg, a flicker of guilt appeared in his eyes. "Lily, wait," he said quietly. "I'll drive you to the clinic." Before I could reply, Grace suddenly gasped and fainted in his arms. Nathan hesitated for only a moment before lifting her up. Turning his head toward me, he said, "Stay here. I'll take Grace back to her dorm first, then I'll come get you." With that, he rushed off, carrying Grace away in his arms. I stood there dazed, watching his back disappear again. Deep inside, I felt a sharp ache, a kind of envy for Grace's position in his heart. That fierce, unwavering love he showed her was something I'd never had. Not in my past life, nor in this one. I didn't wait as he told me to. My legs were numb from the pain, but I forced myself to walk toward the clinic. Suddenly, a pair of strong arms wrapped around my waist. I let out a startled cry as I was lifted clean off the ground. Liam's mocking voice brushed against my ear. "You're bleeding like a stuck pig, and you're still trying to act tough. What a temper. No wonder you could never outshine that delicate little Grace." He adjusted his grip, holding me more securely. "Come on," he said. "I'll take you to the clinic." And that was how Liam Reed carried me, first to the health clinic and then back to the Carter family compound. When General Carter saw my legs covered in cuts and bruises, his face turned dark with anger. Aunt Helen's expression hardened too, and for the first time, I saw real disappointment directed toward Grace. Nathan rushed home soon after, having not found me at the troop. The moment he stepped through the door, General Carter kicked him hard in the side. "Lily already agreed to end the engagement," he shouted. "And you still dared to treat her like this? Apologize." Perhaps realizing his guilt, Nathan walked up to me and muttered, "I'm sorry." Then frowning, he asked, "Why didn't you wait for me outside like I said?" I lifted my head and answered flatly, "It hurt too much." For a brief second, guilt flashed across Nathan's handsome face, but it quickly vanished as he began lecturing me again. This whole thing was your fault. If you had just explained everything earlier at the supply store, Grace wouldn't have had to suffer all those rumors. Tomorrow I'll bring Grace home for dinner. You should make a few of your best dishes, Nathan said, his tone softer now. When Grace comes over, apologize to her in person. Then this whole thing will be over. I gave a faint, bitter smile and pointed to my bandaged legs. Apologize? The doctor said my injuries are too severe. I need to stay in bed for a few days. I'm afraid I won't be able to cook for you tomorrow. An awkward look crossed Nathan's face. Then we'll wait a few days, he said stiffly. Once your legs are better, I'll bring Grace over for dinner. That won't be possible either, I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. Nathan's expression darkened. Lily, he said coldly, I told you our engagement has already been cancelled. Grace has nothing to do with that. Can't you stop targeting her all the time? I lifted my head and met his eyes directly. So whether in my previous life or this one, in Nathan Carter's eyes, I was always that same petty, manipulative woman. Someone small-minded, calculating, always using our engagement as a weapon against the woman he loved. I gave a small, self-mocking smile and forced myself to sound casual. I'm not targeting her, I said softly. I just mean that a few days from now I won't be here anymore. I probably won't have another chance to cook for either of you. Nathan froze for a moment, surprise flashing in his eyes before urgency crept into his voice. What do you mean? You won't be here. Where are you going? Your parents are gone. You can't just go back to your village. What would you do there? You'll have no one to rely on, and those greedy relatives back home will just take whatever you have left. I shook my head slowly. I'm not going back, I said firmly. I've thought about it. Since our engagement is over, it's not right for me to keep living in your house. I found another family that needs a maid. Once my legs heal, I'll go there. I don't think I'll ever come back here again. Maybe my tone was too decisive because for a split second, Nathan's face showed something almost like hurt. He hesitated, then said awkwardly, If you don't want to apologize, fine. I won't bring Grace here for dinner. But you're new here, Lily. You don't know anyone. If you go work for someone else, what if they mistreat you? Just stay here. If you're worried people might misunderstand, I can ask for a transfer to the Southwest with Grace. My heart trembled. I instinctively turned to look at Aunt Helen. And sure enough, her smile faltered when she heard her son was volunteering to move away again just to avoid me. A wave of bitterness rose in my chest. Nathan, I thought, in this life you don't have to go out of your way to avoid me anymore. I won't stand in the way of your love or your perfect little family. Just then Liam Reed walked in. Lily, he said evenly, your room's ready. I'll carry you over. Nathan's head snapped up. He looked at Liam, then at me, his face shifting from pale to red in an instant. A sharp laugh escaped his throat. So that's why you're suddenly leaving, he said mockingly. You found yourself someone better, Lily. I really underestimated you. To stay in the city, you'll even cozy up to someone like Liam Reed. For a moment I froze, not understanding what he meant. But when his words sank in, my cheeks burned hot with anger and humiliation. Liam's expression hardened instantly. He lunged forward to hit Nathan, but I grabbed the hem of his shirt from behind, holding him back. Mr. Reed, please, I said quietly. Let it go. I don't want to stay here any longer. Liam shot Nathan a cold, contemptuous glance, then bent down and lifted me from the bed. But before he could leave, Nathan's hand shot out and grabbed his arm. Put her down, Nathan demanded, his voice tight with anger. His eyes burned with a fury that looked almost jealous. Liam sneered. And why should I? Nathan glared at him. Because she was once engaged to me. Liam's lips curled into a mocking smile. You just said it yourself. Was you were engaged? Past tense. Didn't you already break it off? Nathan's temper snapped. Even if it's over, Lily's parents did my family a great kindness. I have a responsibility toward her. Liam's tone dripped with sarcasm. Responsibility? Oh, I didn't realize employers had such deep responsibilities toward their maids. Nathan froze, unable to respond. I let out a weary sigh, realizing it was time to end this completely. Nathan, I said softly, Mr. Reed is right. Our engagement is over. I'm just a country maid your family hired. You don't owe me anything and you don't have any responsibility toward me. From now on, I won't be coming back to your house again. You don't have to transfer all the way to the southwest just to avoid me, I said softly. Nathan Carter, let's just leave it at that. Goodbye. No, it's better to say we'll never meet again. I later wrote to my father to let him know I had found work as a housekeeper at Liam Reed's home. The Reed family was simple. Liam's father served in the Southern Military District, and his mother was stationed there as well to take care of him. At home, there were only Liam and his grandparents, Grandpa Reed and Grandma Reed, both kind and easygoing people. Before long, I grew used to life as their maid. Every morning, I accompanied Grandma Reed to the market to buy meat and vegetables. In the afternoons, I went fishing with Grandpa Reed. After dinner, I stayed quietly in my room reading or practicing my handwriting. One evening, Liam happened to see me tracing calligraphy sheets. He chuckled softly, and the next day he brought back a whole box of famous calligraphy manuals. I thanked him again and again. Those books were impossible to find even in the city's supply stores. His ears turned red, though he tried to sound casual. Don't mention it, he said, waving a hand. They were just old materials the office was going to throw out. I only brought them home instead of selling them for scrap paper. I smiled, lips pressed together to hide my amusement. The next evening there were 2 new dishes on the dinner table: sweet plum ribs and crispy fried pork. Grandma Reed laughed teasingly. Oh my, why are tonight's dishes all Liam's favorites? Blushing, I lowered my head, hiding my face in my bowl. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liam glance at me quickly, his ears faintly flushed. After dinner, I gathered my courage and called out to him before he could head upstairs. Mr. Reed, I said, my voice small but steady. I'd like to enroll in a night school, but I don't know where to sign up or if they'd even accept someone like me since I'm not from this city. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. A country girl like me, a maid, daring to dream of studying at night school and maybe one day taking the college entrance exam. Would Liam laugh at me? After all, in my previous life, I had once told Nathan that I wanted to continue studying and take the exam. I had foolishly believed that if I became a college student, I would finally be worthy of a man who had already become a military commander. Nathan had only looked at me with contempt and said coldly, "You're already in your 20s. Don't tell me you still want to go back to middle school. You're married now. Your duty is to stay home and take care of my parents." In this life, I no longer dreamed of empty, unreachable love. I wanted to see for myself whether I could pass that exam, whether I could one day reach a place so high that even Nathan Carter would have to look up to me. Liam agreed right away to help me find out about the school. I hadn't expected that the very next day, he would personally drive me to the night school to register. I held back my excitement as I paid the registration fee and received a stack of new textbooks. On the way home, I was so happy I couldn't stop humming an old mountain song from my village. Liam laughed quietly beside me, his eyes soft as he said, "It's just night school. Are you really that happy?" I nodded eagerly. "Of course I am, Mr. Reed. Thank you. Really, thank you so much." It was only when I registered that I learned the night school was meant only for city residents with local household registrations. Liam must have pulled a lot of strings to get me accepted. He smiled lightly. "If you really want to thank me," he said, "then call me brother." My face flushed crimson. After a long pause, I whispered shyly, "Thank you, Brother Liam." He broke into a delighted laugh, but then a trembling, angry voice came from behind us. "Lily, what did you just call him?" It was Nathan. His voice quivered with suppressed fury. Liam turned, clearly realizing what Nathan must have been thinking. A mischievous look flashed in his eyes as he slipped his arm casually around my shoulders. "Lily and I are close," he said with a teasing smile. "What's wrong with her calling me brother?" Nathan didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed entirely on me, burning with accusation. "Lily," he said tightly, "our families have known each other for years, and yet you've never once called me brother." "You? How could you call him that?" I was already losing patience. "Captain Carter," I interrupted sharply, "I'm grateful to you and Aunt Helen for taking me in and giving me work, but you said it yourself. I'm just a country maid your family hired. I don't think a maid has the right to call her employer brother, do you? Nathan's face went pale as if the memory of our first meeting had struck him all over again. For a long moment, he just stood there before giving a bitter, forced smile. Lily, he said quietly, that's not what I meant. I cut him off again, my tone calm but cold. Whether that's what you meant or not doesn't matter anymore, Captain Carter. You wouldn't want Miss Grace to misunderstand, would you? I think there's no need for us to have any more contact from now on, I said quietly. If we ever meet again, let's treat each other as strangers. Maybe those 3 simple words, not necessary anymore, wounded Nathan Carter's pride. Because after that day I didn't see him for a long time. I only heard later that just like in my previous life, he had applied for transfer to the Southwest Front. Grace Miller went with the performing troupe as well. This time, without me standing between them, Nathan and Grace would probably have a happy ending. As for me, I finally had a direction to pursue. My grades at night school improved rapidly, and 6 months later, my teacher wrote me a personal recommendation letter. With that letter, I was able to skip a grade and enter the equivalent of the 2nd year of high school. Grandma Reed, feeling sorry that I had no parents and nowhere else to go, insisted that I continue living in their home and even tried to pay me a housekeeper's wage. I refused. Instead, I helped her with chores and tended to the small vegetable garden in the evenings and on weekends to make up for rent. When Liam Reed learned I planned to take the college entrance exam, he brought me a large box full of practice materials and printed exam papers. Holding the brand new books and freshly inked test sheets, I deliberately teased him. What are these? More scrap papers from your office, too. Liam laughed and rubbed the top of my head roughly. Just do your best. Once you pass, I'll drive you to college myself. Around that time, General Carter and Aunt Helen also sent me a thick envelope. Inside were 1,000 yuan and some ration and meat coupons. I returned it all untouched. In my previous life, it was my own stubbornness that had driven a wedge between them and their only son, keeping them apart for 10 long years. In this life, I didn't want any connection to the Carter family at all. Time flew by, and before I knew it, the day of the college entrance exam had arrived. What I didn't expect was that Nathan had taken special leave to return from thousands of miles away just to see me off. But he wasn't fast enough. Liam got there first. When Nathan saw me climb into the passenger seat of Liam's Jeep with my backpack on, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe sorrow. Lily, he called out softly. I nodded, not sure what to say, and could only manage a faint thank you. Liam, of course, couldn't resist adding fuel to the fire. With a deliberate grin, he said loudly, Good thing you broke off that engagement, Lily. Otherwise, you'd still be stuck working as their unpaid maid instead of taking the college entrance exam. You really ought to thank Captain Carter for not marrying you. Nathan's face went pale. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. He could only stand there, watching helplessly as his former fiancé sat beside his old rival in the front seat of a military jeep. As we drove off, I suddenly heard shouting behind us. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Grace, once elegant and poised, now clutching Nathan's uniform, screaming and clawing at him like a madwoman. Her face was twisted with anger, her cries echoing down the street. But that was Nathan and Grace's story now. It had nothing to do with me anymore. When I finished my last exam, Liam showed up to pick me up carrying a bright bouquet of sunflowers. On the way back, he told me what had happened at the front. Apparently, Nathan had once been in line for a promotion, but Grace had appeared on the battlefield. During a rescue attempt for her, Nathan's unit had lost 5 soldiers. Though he wasn't demoted, he was severely reprimanded. The incident was reported across the entire army, and he was told that unless he risked his life again, he would have no chance at promotion for at least 5 years. I was stunned. Why would Grace go to the front to find him? I asked. Liam let out a mocking laugh. Rumor has it she found a letter Nathan wrote to another woman inside what she thought was his farewell note. She went to confront him, and her little stunt got 5 soldiers killed. What a disaster of a woman. I didn't respond. It was Nathan's choice, his life. All I could do was respect it and wish them peace in whatever form they could find it. Half a month later, my college acceptance letter finally arrived at the Reeds' home. When everyone learned I had been accepted into Capital Medical University, Grandma Reed and Grandpa Reed were overjoyed. They sent the guards to buy candies, and the three of us went door to door around the residential compound to hand them out. When we reached the Carter household, I immediately sensed the forced smiles on Aunt Helen and General Carter's faces. The General congratulated me and presented me with a fine imported fountain pen, while Aunt Helen handed me a red envelope. As I stepped out of their house, I came face to face with Nathan and Grace. The moment Grace saw me, her expression twisted with rage. "Lily," she snapped, "you already broke off your engagement with Nathan. How shameless can you be still hanging around him? Don't think that just because you got into college, you're suddenly worthy of him." "Let me tell you the truth," Grace said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I'm carrying Nathan's child." Nathan's expression changed instantly. He yanked his hand free from Grace's grip and turned toward me, panic flashing in his eyes. "Lily, it's not what she said," he stammered. "What happened between us was an accident." Grace screamed, then slapped him hard across the face. "An accident? Nathan Carter, are you even a man? I'm pregnant with your child, and now you're telling me it was an accident? What do you mean by that? You see, your precious Lily has become a college student, and now you regret breaking off the engagement. You think you can just throw me away and run back to her." Her voice broke into hysterical sobs. "I'm warning you. If you dare abandon me and our baby, I'll go straight to the military authorities and have you court-martialed." Nathan's patience snapped. He shoved her hard, his voice sharp with frustration. "Stop dragging innocent people into this. You know better than anyone who that child's father really is." Grace stumbled backward, teetered at the top of the stairs and fell. Her scream pierced the air, followed by the horrifying sight of blood spreading across the hem of her dress. My baby," she shrieked in terror. News spread quickly. Grace lost the baby. Enraged and desperate, she threatened to report Nathan to the police and have him jailed. Aunt Helen begged her through tears while General Carter, furious at his son, tied Nathan up and beat him with a belt until it snapped. Nathan's back was covered in welts. But even then, he gritted his teeth and refused to agree to marry Grace. It wasn't until Aunt Helen fell to her knees before him, sobbing, that he finally gave in and agreed to the wedding. I didn't understand what Nathan was fighting against. In my previous life, he had risked his life on the battlefield for Grace, even staying away from home for 10 years just to be with her. Yet in this life, when I had stepped aside and given them the chance to be together, he no longer wanted her. Before long, the day came for me to start college. And it happened to be the very same day as Nathan and Grace's wedding. I didn't go. I only asked Grandma Reed to deliver a red envelope on my behalf as a token gesture. But 2 days later, to my utter disbelief, I saw Nathan outside my dorm building, unshaven, disheveled, and clearly having run away from his own wedding. When he saw me coming out of the dorm, he rushed toward me like a man possessed. "Lily," he said hoarsely, "you were reborn too, weren't you?" My mind went blank. Could it be? Was Nathan also reborn? Seeing the shock on my face, he gave a bitter, weary smile and nodded. "Yes, I came back too. But I came back too late." Then something changed in his eyes, like a dying flame reigniting with hope. "But it's not too late, Lily," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "I came back during the wedding. I haven't married Grace yet. Come with me. Let's go to the Southwest together. This time we can start over, please." I took a step back and raised my left hand. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, "but I'm already engaged." This time I hadn't spent 30 years working as a maid in his family. My hands, once rough and scarred from scrubbing floors, were now smooth and pale from years of study. On my ring finger shimmered a diamond so bright that its cold light pierced Nathan's eyes. He blinked rapidly, almost blinded, his throat tightening. "Engaged," he stammered. "How? How could you suddenly be engaged? Weren't you just coming here for college?" Just then a Jeep pulled up behind me. Liam Reed stepped out, carrying 2 lunchboxes. I reached out and took his hand, meeting Nathan's stunned gaze. "Captain Carter," I said evenly, "the school never said students can't be engaged. Liam proposed to me the day he brought me here to register, and I said yes. After graduation we'll get married." Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with fury. With a roar he lunged forward and threw a punch straight at Liam. Liam dropped the lunchboxes and hit back immediately. The containers burst open and braised pork scattered all over the ground. The commotion drew the attention of the campus guards who rushed in to separate them. As they were pulled apart, Nathan looked down at the smashed food on the pavement and gave a bitter, hollow laugh. "Liam Reed," he spat. "You don't even understand her. Lily hates meat. She's a vegetarian. You don't even know that about her. What makes you think you can make her happy?" Liam Reed burst out laughing. "Nathan Carter, you're the one who doesn't really know Lily," he said sharply. "Her favorite dish has always been braised pork." Nathan shook his head furiously. "Impossible. She never ate meat when she lived in our house." Liam glanced at me with a mixture of pity and anger before replying coldly. "That's because she didn't dare. She always felt like an unwanted guest eating your family's food, afraid even to touch the meat you bought. She didn't want to cause trouble or look greedy. But it's fine. If you don't cherish her, I will. When Lily marries me, I'll make sure she can eat braised pork for the rest of her life." Nathan looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. His whole body froze, eyes wide and unfocused, as if his world had just crumbled. After that day, Liam called General Carter, who personally came to take Nathan away. I didn't hear any more about him until 3 years later. By then, I had finally graduated from college. Liam and I decided to return home to hold our wedding ceremony. The residential compound looked almost the same as before, though General Carter and Aunt Helen had already moved away. I heard that after Nathan married Grace Miller, she couldn't bear his cold indifference. Later, she was caught in bed with a dance partner from her troupe. Enraged, Nathan beat her so severely that she was hospitalized. To protect his son, General Carter had to swallow his pride and beg for help everywhere, eventually paying the Miller family a huge sum of money. In the end, Nathan was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The day Liam and I were married happened to be the same day Nathan was released. When he appeared before me, thin, haggard, clutching a bouquet of lilies, I could hardly believe my eyes. Was this the same man who in my previous life had once been a proud, fearless hero on the battlefield? Seeing me standing beside Liam, radiant in my white wedding gown, Nathan's expression twisted into something bittersweet. He stepped forward holding out the bouquet. Instinctively, I took 2 steps back, his eyes dimmed with pain. "Lily," he said softly, his voice rough, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see what you look like in a wedding dress." For a moment my mind drifted back to the past. In my previous life, Aunt Helen had prepared a wedding dress for me. But when Grace cried that she had always dreamed of wearing a gown and standing beside Nathan, he gave that very dress to her. On my wedding day, I had stood before everyone in a borrowed white dress, mocked, humiliated, and utterly alone. But in this life I had met the right man. I was finally wearing a gown that truly belonged to me. Nathan still tried to hand me the lilies, but Liam snatched them away and threw them far into the distance. Nathan's eyes flared with anger. "Liam Reed, what are you doing?" Liam smirked coldly. "Nathan, you say you love Lily but you don't even know her. She's allergic to lilies. The one who loves lilies is Grace, isn't it?" Nathan's whole body trembled. His lips quivered as he looked at me, shame flooding his face. "I'm sorry, Lily," he murmured. "I didn't know." Yes, only someone who truly loves you notices the smallest things. What you like, what you dislike, what makes you smile or frown. Nathan's feelings for me had never been love, only stubborn pride and regret. Once I understood that, I smiled gently. "It's fine," I said softly. "We were never really close. It's normal that you wouldn't know about my allergy." I gestured toward the hall. "The ceremony's about to begin. Please go take a seat." I greeted him just as I would any other guest, polite, distant, and calm. My indifference made Nathan's eyes burn red. His hands clenched tightly, and I could see the struggle in his gaze. Remorse, pain, maybe even despair. But his emotions no longer concerned me. My wedding was about to begin, and I had no time for his sorrow. As I turned to leave, I thought I heard him whisper behind me, "Lily, the truth is back then I..." But at that exact moment, the sound of fireworks drowned out his unfinished words. It didn't matter anymore. He had chosen his own path and I had finally found mine.